Hello, and welcome to episode 4 of Velvet Revolution. My name's Ben Rice, and good day, Dave Noble. How you doing?
I'm all right, man. I just want to start quickly. Did you just do a little snivel?
Yeah, right at the beginning.
Yeah. Should we keep that in? All right, just keep that in. I'm I'm really good. I feel tired, but I feel jovial
Jovial.
with the fatigue that I feel. How
Okay.
are you doing?
Yeah. I had a day of rest yesterday and recharging and resetting. Just I became best mates with my sofa and my TV,
I,
and
s- I see a pattern. I see a pattern of work depleted sofa.
yeah.
Forgive me for saying that, but
No, it's definitely yeah. It helps reset and recharge.
mm,
Losing myself in other people's worlds.
yeah, nature of your job, right?
Yeah.
And then, so losing yourself in other people's worlds.
Mm. I don't. That's TV and film, isn't it? You get immersed in
Oh,
someone else's world.
yeah, sorry, yeah, I know what you mean. We was talking about that
Yeah.
previously. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I watched a really incredible film about dry grasses. I think it's called. It's a Turkish director,
Mm,
and yeah, he does these incredible, very slow, very long films with lots of dialogue, and they usually have really arrogant male leads who sort of think they can fix the world, or they're always very intellectual. You know, that type of man you meet that thinks they know best.
yeah.
So yeah, it was a quite a bleak film, but also very very interesting, very very strong film.
Subtitles.
Yep.
Oh God, how could like when I switch? This is just me. If I'm feeling tired, the minute there's something with subtitles, I'm like, I can't handle that. I need to. I can't. I can't do that. I need to know what's going on without subtitles.
Yeah, I sometimes get that. Sometimes I just want action. I just want something really stupid that I don't need to think about. I mean, after that intellectual 3 hours, I think it's 3 hours and 20 minutes, that film, I then watched The Avengers. So, I got my superhero fix after that and watched something where I didn't have to think
Classic.
or read or try and work out what the subtext was. Yeah.
Love it. Okay. Well, look, whatever floats your boat, eh? Um, so episode 4, you say, and we're on the letter D,
D.
and it's me to
It's you to
choose.
choose.
So I've got it in front of me.
Good.
I'm looking through. There's a lot of D's here. Um, so uh let's have a look. Oh, there's some really good ones popping out, and I would love to go with something a little bit outside the box. Let's have a look. Oh man, there's a lot here that I want to cover. Do you know what I mean? There's all of them.
Season 2, we can do just D's. Yeah.
Honestly, there's some really good ones in there.
Okay.
Can I read them out or not?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll let you. Yeah, I'm
Right.
happy with it. Yeah.
Deflection, discontent, deceit, defensive, defiant, dependent, depressed, delirious, deranged, denial, deprived, dishonest, disillusion, disloyal, disobedient,
Mm.
disrespectful, disempower, disengage, discourteous, discourteous. Is that how you say it? Discourteous. Teacher, how do I say it?
I'd go with discourteous. Yeah.
Discourteous. Decisive, disciplined, destructive, dread, despair, delusional, dehumanization.
Wowzers.
It's an interesting one.
That's a big word.
Disappointment, dismissive, discouragement, disconnection. Okay, I'm going to go deflection. Boom.
Okay. Why did you go for deflection?
It's top of the list. It is. It's top of the list.
Okay.
But I just read through them all, and
Yeah.
there's a lot there that are really all of them. I'd love to do all of them.
Okay.
And I think there's some crossovers here,
Yeah, yeah.
big time. Okay. Deflection, disobedient, for example. You
Yeah.
know, I am not obeying, so I'm going to deflect.
Okay.
That's how I interpret it.
Okay.
Anyway, deflection.
Wow. Okay.
So, what does that mean to you, Mr. Rice?
What does that mean to me? Deflection. It's a tough one. Nothing's coming straight into my head.
Really?
How do I deflect?
Okay, look, I've got the book out again.
Yeah.
I'm just going to look it up whilst you have a little.
So I think in terms of deflect, I definitely deflected more when I was younger, I think. In that deflecting from a perspective of not feeling good enough.
Mhm.
And is that what deflecting is?
Well, look, shall I just pause a minute?
Go on then.
Right, I'll just jump in. So I've just got the dictionary, and I've got deflect, right? So, and it does say deflection and deflector, but deflect. Turn aside from a straight course or intended purpose. That's the first example. Second example is prevent something undesirable from being aimed at you. Okay? Prevent something undesirable from being aimed at you. So it's like aversion. Does that make sense, do you think?
Yeah, I think that's where I was going with it, with that idea of deflecting criticism, deflecting any commentary on what I do or don't do, and not feeling like that I'm a good enough human being, and that people can make me feel worse.
Mm, okay. To me, I use the word quite a lot actually. My understanding of deflection is avoidance.
Yeah.
Um, another way of putting it is I'm gonna sidestep the issue. Yeah.
Yeah.
Escapism,
Yeah.
swerving, dodging, maybe a bit of manipulations involved. Deflection. So, example. Um, maybe throughout my life, I've experienced times when, well, I have. I'm not saying maybe. um, I've interpreted a situation inaccurately, right? So my interpretation of the way I see things through the lens that I view the world is a little bit off center, a bit deluded, a bit warped,
Hmm.
right? And it's impaired. Why is that? Well, look, I'm going to use fear, right? I'm scared. So I'm seeing a situation through a lens of fear. Is that an accurate perspective? Not sure. But someone might point out to me something I'm doing because of that, if this
Yep.
makes sense, right? So
Yep.
I'm coming from a place of fear, so I'm acting in a certain way. And someone pulls me up on it and says, "Hey, mate, you know, that thing you're doing, you know, you might want to look at that." This has happened throughout my life, 100%. It can still happen. Well, I'm not perfect, but I see the lens through a very different perspective now. You know, it's refocused.
Mm.
But before, prior to me focusing the lens so it's more accurate and has more clarity, more bang for buck, it was very warped and misinterpreted things, situations. I read them wrong through, you know, could say paranoia, insecurity, fear, all of that. And so when I'm misinterpreting situations and people are pulling me up on my reaction to that, I'm gonna maybe go, "No, I ain't," um, and put it back on the person who's telling me, pointing out so kindly that, my behaviour's a bit whack, and me saying, "No, it's not me, it's you."
Yeah.
Right? So, for me, that's deflection.
Do you think then that, bearing in mind your story or narrative, that you said it was the filter was off, and I think we live in a sort of a very black and white sort of world at the moment where, you're good or you're bad. Do you think then there are behaviors that were, as you said, whack, were bad, were in, you were in the red, you were doing stuff that wasn't good, and now you look back and think, oh yeah, I probably shouldn't have done that. But at the time, if someone pointed that out, someone would say, yeah, you're really off point here.
Mm.
And you couldn't take that criticism.
Yeah, I couldn't take accountability, right? So that's what it comes down to. I believe everything we cover on these is
Mm,
down to accountability. You either take accountability for your
mm,
whackness or you're not. Um, and I was ill equipped to take accountability for my actions, my conduct, no matter how whack it was.
yeah.
So um I always come back to, I always repeat myself. It's unskillful versus skillful, like sidestepping an issue. Like, there's certain people in places of authority. Don't want to actually use the term because I don't want to call them out. But you only have to watch certain shows on TV. Normally, it's like, where there's a panel and you've got certain people on the panel and they're discussing current affairs
Hmm.
to keep it broad, right? There's a lot of sidestepping going on that gig.
Right.
I've seen it.
Hmm.
Am I alone, people? Am I? Am I the only one seeing the people that sidestep the issue and avoid answering a question and, you know, not taking accountability and just owning it and saying, "Yeah, do you know what? Yeah, you're right. You are right." And, we're trying our hardest to see where we can change that. And we're doing our best. To the best of our ability, we will do our utmost best to take accountability for that and to make some changes so it's a more skillful outcome. That's my understanding of this stuff. And I had that in abundance. It came so naturally to me, which is quite a scary thing, really. That um, I was really good at sidestepping and deflecting stuff away from me, so I didn't have to take accountability.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's, for me, I feel very much that a large part of my life was lived creating excuses, creating a narrative that suited me, and not being totally honest with myself in terms of, am I actually doing the right thing here? And I think that's quite often where we get stuck, is we are in situations where the ego takes over. What does the ego want? The ego wants what it can get. And it takes over in that, you will do things that are selfish,
Mhm,
uh, morally corrupt, if I can go that far. I think there's
mhm,
things I've done where I'm pretty ashamed of my behaviors, and it's only when I get older and more honest with myself and what it is that I want and need and
mm,
what is nourishing for me, that I think I stop sidestepping. I stop making excuses and go, yeah, actually, I did some stuff that was really shit,
mm,
and I need to own that.
mhm,
And at some point, I don't know. It's not about, you get those dreadful films or documentaries where men get obsessed with going and finding every partner that they've ever been with, and, oh, tell me, tell me that I'm actually not a bad person. I think that's what it's all about, isn't it? Why do you need that conversation? It's like you don't need to go back and revisit that. That person's moved on. You're in a different
Mm.
part of your journey. But there seems to be definitely a sort of, yeah, I think it's the ego speaking again, isn't it? Please tell me
Mhm.
I'm okay. Please tell me I wasn't a bad person. If you're even thinking that, then yeah, you
Yeah.
were. Of course you were.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I could reel off so many examples of, you know, are we landing on this, that deflection is what we're saying it is?
I think so. I think it is. I think I've deflected for
Defected.
been defected and deflecting for what am I now? Yeah, for a good 40 years.
Wow.
And it's only, I would say, maybe the past couple of years that I've really started to own that behavior.
Well, that's really I admire your, transparency, honesty. There you go, your accountability.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about, man.
It's like putting it out there, like saying, actually, I was a I was a really shit person for quite a lot of my adulthood because because I was unskillful. Because I hadn't given myself the skills to actually communicate, I'm trying to think of the word, navigate, adulthood.
Yeah, and something just came up for me. Selfish just popped into my head. Was you a selfish little rascal when you was like, and you never really? I mean, I talk for myself. I was
Mm,
selfish swine. Yeah, which is why. I mean, that is total lack of taking responsibility for your actions. Your conduct is deflection. Avoidance, sidestepping. When people say, "Look, Dave, that thing you're doing, it's really off. It's rubbish." You know, and me saying, "Don't know what you're talking about,"
yeah,
or getting really defensive because it's an act of defense, right? Deflection.
yeah, and the word that's really coming up for me is avoidance.
Hmm.
It's, I know I know I am. Not to say, I was about to put it in the past tense there, but I avoid. I avoid confrontation. I avoid intimacy. I avoid situations where I feel, uh naked, I guess. I feel like seen. And that
Mm,
deflection has been one of my biggest defenses.
absolutely. I relate. So there's vulnerability attached to the art of deflection
Mm,
because of what you just said. I feel exposed.
yeah,
I feel volatile. I feel unsafe.
yeah,
And this is where it doesn't have to all be bad. Think about it, right? Because this is a common thing, and anyone listening will maybe agree with me, or maybe you won't. So, whatever. But there is definitely for me, I know I've got a lot of, like you say, I've got an extensive amount of my life where I was misrepresenting myself. That's how I see it.
yeah.
Yeah. It's not like I was a bad person. I didn't mean to be a twat. It's like I was just misrepresenting myself because I was coming from all of these lower vibrational emotions
Mhm.
and feelings and thoughts, fear, insecurity, abandonment, you know, all the usual suspects. So there's a huge amount of vulnerability there that I felt. I felt very, very, very scared and ill equipped to be in life,
Yeah.
surrounded by all these, as I put them, weird, strange adult creatures, and my peers. I felt really overwhelmed.
Mm.
So the art of deflection to me is a coping strategy so that
Yeah.
I can get through my life. But the thing is, it might serve us and get us to a point. I needed deflection in school for sure. And you see this every day you're in your school. And maybe you can give some examples. I don't know if you're able to do that because it's safeguarding, but you know, I was in a school the other day doing some works with some students and teachers in a school just the other day, and I was met with deflection, you know, because of what I'm talking about. They don't feel safe in a space, in a situation. So how do we cope with that? So that isn't to me necessarily a bad thing if it means that someone is not, you know, if someone can still participate in life and not be completely alienated and be on their own in a room, you know, alone, whatever, you know, if they're still turning up for life, but they find that they have to deflect certain situations and certain scenarios just to get through. And that's okay. I know I did it, and that's what I was doing. You know, I couldn't, you know, I'd walk in a room and I felt like really like, whoa, you know, it's so ego goes on, you know, the mask. Wearing a mask is deflection, isn't it?
Yeah.
Deflecting from me just being raw, as you say, feeling naked, that I am enough just as I am without having to put a mask on, put my hood up, metaphorically speaking.
Well, I think we've both worked in schools where the hood is up physically as well. You know, that's
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
yeah. The hoodie is the biggest armor of the
Yeah.
teenager, I think, and the balaclava obviously now is sort of as the real gangsters. The kids running around with balaclavas who literally do not know who I am, and I'm not sure who I am either.
I was with a I can say this much, I was with a guy from Los Angeles. I was working with him. He was like a young guy, and he was over in London. I was like, you know, supporting him, mentoring him. And he was like, I had to sort of talk him off the edge, you know, talk him off the edge of like, because he wanted to rip the balaclavas off some of the dudes that he was seeing in London. Going, what is wrong with these people? Why are they wearing these masks, man? Why don't they just take their masks off and, you know, stand toe to toe and talk to, you know, he couldn't get his head around it. That's the culture that these young people have, you know, is that they've got to put these masks on. Why is that, you know?
I mean, what I see on a day-to-day basis in terms of deflection is young people who have no idea how to express themselves. You know, like I mean, and like I'm looking at it now as a man in his 40s, and we're doing this podcast because I don't know if I did have the language or the understanding of emotions for a long time in my adult life, let alone my teenage life. And when you're a teenager, things are so much more intense, you know, and so much more, you know, it's the first time you're experiencing some of these things. And for what I find in school is you know, so many kids, they don't want to talk because they think if they start talking, they will say the wrong thing. They will, you know, they don't have the language or the understanding to describe how they feel. So then you end up either with an intense outburst of emotion, and it's normally anger. With the kids I'm working with, it's like I'm gonna really lose it, and I'm gonna punch some stuff, and gonna break,
Punch a hole through the wall.
yeah, and I'm gonna break a door, and I'm gonna, you know, I'm gonna kick stuff, and then you will get the other end of the spectrum where people will just cry and sob, and they won't be able to tell you why they're sad or
Yeah.
why they're angry.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of both your and mine narratives. Is I think we probably. Oh well, I'm sorry. I shouldn't be speaking for you, but for me, I didn't know why I was sad, and I didn't know why I was angry till much later on in my life, and I
Mm.
wasn't able to express that in any other way than just being totally well, there was no physical mask, but there was just a pretense. So everything was deflection. I was the good guy. I knew what what was right and wrong. I thought I had a high moral code, and I would just go and get what I wanted.
Yes.
In
Selfish.
selfish in
Yeah.
terms of what I thought I deserved. I think that's
Mhm.
another thing.
World owes me something, right?
Yeah, yeah. And and I'd cause pain and misery, both for other people and for myself.
You bastard. I'm
Yeah,
joking. I'm
yeah.
joking. I'm joking.
Totally in fear of that judgment.
I'm
That
jo
actually someone's gonna call me out on it. Someone's gonna say, "Yeah, you weren't great, were you?"
Yeah. Totally get it, man. I called you a little cheeky bastard there, but it's with love that I say that because, you know, I've had a few people call me that. And a lot worse,
Yeah, yeah.
you know. And again, it comes back to accountability, and you're not that person anymore. And I'm not, you know. When you get real, it's all about honesty. Getting real, getting honest with yourself, you know. People can so kindly point out the things that we don't like about ourselves, as they used to, you know, whether that was a girl, you know, like my girlfriend, partner, you know, a whoever, a mate, or family, you know, whatever. I think everyone can relate to this, surely. You know, being human, part of the human experience is when people who are around us that bear witness to our behavior and our conduct, and our actions. It's not always going to be fruitful. I mean, no one's perfect. So when we get called out on our actions, what do we do with that? Is there humility there? You know, is there a um, a response that is healthy? Is there a healthy response to getting called out on our behavior when people consider it to be a little bit, you know, not appropriate for whatever reason? You know, what do we do with that? Do we put our hands up and go, "Oh, I'm really sorry," like with absolute, you know, genuine accountability and saying, "Look, I'm really, really sorry for that. I'm really sorry for that," you know, and I regret doing it, and I will do better. I will
Mm.
do better. I acknowledge what you're saying. I hear you, and I'm really sorry for that. And I know sorry is just a word, and I'm not just going to say sorry. I'm going to do all I can to the best of my ability to look at that and to change it for a better outcome. Okay, and and then do it. That's the important bit. Is then do it
Yeah, yeah.
to the best of your ability. Is that going on? Is that going on for you? Is that how you do things, or is that how the people around you do things? Is this how we operate, or do we, you know, same scenario? Do we just go, "The fuck are you talking about? How dare you make me feel like I'm doing something wrong?" And then you deflect it away from you because the art of deflection, and I used to be quite good at this, is to go, "Well, you, what about the thing that you do and this and that and you know that thing that you do and the thing you did the other day and da 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 da." And I think we can all again relate to that kind of um it's almost like you get into this sort of like and it's all ego. It's all fueled by ego
Mm.
and insecurities and you know issues.
Shame.
Yeah, all of
Yeah.
that stuff. And then it just perpetuates and before you know it, you're in this little tangent. Is that the right word? Of just or just
Yeah.
where you're just like, getting into it, and then it all becomes really kind of like horrible, and then there's a
Yeah.
fallout, and then no one resolves it. The person that's calling you out on your behavior is then attacked, and no one wins. And it's not about winning. It's not meant to be a winner and a loser. But there's no goodness that comes out of that, and nothing gets resolved, and there's no growth in it, and it just perpetuates. And in a way, without getting too into it, if you look at history, you could say that about two countries, two nations, or two different opposing ideologies, religions, whatever. They get into that sort of malarkey.
Of deflecting.
I mean,
I like the fact you've just reduced the wars to some malarkey, to some ideologies.
melodramatic malarkey.
Yeah, yeah.
If you really put it into context, what the fuck's all that about? You know, like, what the fuck is anything about when we get into this? Why all it takes is for someone to have some humility to go, "Do you know what? I hear you." It's about listening. I think deflection is not listening.
And I really like that idea you were starting to talk about there, where you mentioned the word growth, because I feel like when you're just touching on huge world matters there, uh, and thinking about the stuckness, like we talk about growth mindset
Mm,
and this idea that you get stuck. And I feel like I was dealing with a kid this week, and he's been involved in some really serious stuff. And the first incident happened when they were relatively young, I think maybe 12, 13. And it's just perpetuated, it's just carried on. And there's never been allowed a moment, or there's never been a resolution to this incident. And I don't believe that anyone is a bad person. I don't believe anyone is born bad. And I just think we get stuck in a situation. And if it's not allowed to resolve, to grow, and for someone to change and learn, I mean, that's what learning is about, isn't it? It's about making mistakes, just some mistakes that are much bigger than others.
yeah.
Um, but I think sometimes when we are young and we're learning out who we are going to be, if we get stuck in a situation at that point, then that's it. It's like that's you're going to have to defend that where you're being put at that point,
Mm,
which is why we deflect any sort of judgment. Then it's like, no, this is who I am. I've decided this is who I'm going to be.
mhm.
And I mean, I just think it's really sad that we end up fixed as human beings, and can end up being fixed as human beings at a very young age. And
Fixed as in, like, stagnant with
yeah, and
well,
labeled, but also, and that's not just us as human beings. That's how society.
yeah.
It's like, I mean, I don't want to mention it because it's everyone's talking about it at the moment. But the adolescents, the Netflix show.
I've been told by a handful of people, "You gotta watch that," and I
Yeah,
haven't watched it yet, yeah.
and it's like this kid has done something really, really horrendous. I mean, they've killed somebody, but
Mm,
he's 14, I think, in the show, or 13, and it's like that kid is his life over? And I've met lots of kids, not that have killed people, but have done some quite serious stuff.
mm,
And then it's like, that's it. That's you now. And
mm,
it's like, at what point can we grow or move beyond that? Because that person is going to be defending themselves for the rest of their life. They're going to be deflecting. They are going to be, like, I believe most people. I mean, there's psychopaths out there. There's no doubt about it.
mhm,
But 99.99999% of humanity, they want to be good. They want to do the right thing. And they get stuck, like you said, in ideologies or
yeah,
cultures or conflict.
yeah,
And then it's like, where do we allow that person to change? Where do we allow that growth to happen and go, actually,
yeah,
it's not just black and white.
yeah,
There's other stuff happening. And I'm not saying that we should be forgiving murderers in any shape or form, or like really serious crimes. But I think how we deal with those situations, you
Mm.
know, is just locking someone up in a box and throwing away the key for the rest of life. It's like, what's the point?
Yeah. Well, you know, it's closed. It's a closed, finite reaction to circumstance, situations. If that makes sense.
Mm,
Um, there is no growth. There is no evolution. There is no innovation. There is no going forward. There's no elevation if we just keep things closed
mm,
and boxed in and fixated and finite and absolute. There's always possibility. There's always room for change, growth, elevation. Always, in my opinion. Always. Um, is it nurtured? Sometimes, maybe. Depends what you're talking about, what situations and areas of life that we're talking about. But you only have to look at history. Everyone always says, I don't know where they get this from, like, oh, you know, we can learn a lot from history. Well, show me where we're fucking learning from history.
mm-hmm,
Because history tells me that we ain't learning a lot
mm-hmm,
because we keep doing the same fucking thing.
mm-hmm.
Or am I the only one that thinks that?
No, it's totally cyclical.
Do you know what I
So
mean?
like we live through the same history over and
Yeah.
over again.
And we're stuck in this groove, right? And I know it well, right?
Mm-hmm.
People, just to clarify, I know it well, so I'm not just talking about shit. I'm not really sure what I'm talking about. Let me give you an example, right? Perpetuating cycles, patterns, the revolving door. And in Buddhist realms, and I'm not Buddhist, but I've studied, you know, the philosophy and the psychology of it, they call it samsara,
Mm-hmm.
right? The perpetuating wheel of life.
Yep.
Rebirth, suffering, death. Rebirth, suffering, death. Throw in a little bit of joy in there as well, so it's not all bad. And some really nice human experiences. But basically that's what you're getting, and that's what we're living, right?
Yeah.
Whether you're conscious to that or not, this is what we're doing in the world. And we have been since day dot.
Mm-hmm.
Is the perpetuating cycle of life and death. Suffering, splash of happiness and titillation along the way. But it's that. And the wheel of samsara, the wheel of suffering, life and death, it's a choice of whether you want to participate in the suffering bit or you want to participate in the, you know, the nirvana part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The serenity bit. And I know both. I was in that perpetuating wheel of suffering for the first 3 decades of my life. And then I suddenly realized, I actually learned about this. You know, this is what I studied it and went, oh, wow, I'm participating in this.
Yeah.
I am choosing to stay stuck in this perpetuating cycle of doom and chaos and mayhem and misery. It's my doing. I'm creating
Mm-hmm.
it. It's not happening to me. Like, I'm participating in, I have a part in it.
Yeah.
And it's again, I come back to it, accountability. So once I've got that knowledge, and anyone listening, you might think, what the fuck is this guy talking about? Right? Okay, that's cool. You know, continue business as usual, perpetuating wheel of suffering. It's everyone else's fault.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But then I suddenly realized through accountability, because I was suffering so greatly that I was forced to make some change because my life could have ended at 34
Mm-hmm.
if I didn't. So I chose to actually look at things a different way, through a different lens, through a different perspective. My mind opened up from that fixated, closed, boxed in, finite, non absolute, or no absolute, whatever way you want to put it, viewpoint that this is my lot and there is no room for change. And I started this beautiful journey of self discovery and evolution, innovation, elevation, onwards and upwards. And I still do this to this day. And here I am, years and years and years later, right? And I have the evidence of doing it one way, and I have the evidence of doing it a different way. Deflection, it's everyone else.
Yeah.
It's that ideology. It's that person. It's that group of people. It's this. Because of this, I'm suffering. And it's perspective. It's my relationship to the world I live in that was completely inaccurate. Deflection is I'm a victim,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion. So, am I making sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think I think we get forced. We make choices. We make bad choices. We also make good choices. It's not that simple. But the bad choices just keep stacking up, I guess. And those that they sort of, we're more inclined to veer towards the negative and get stuck in that mode of, as I said, like the victim mode. The feeling like I've made so many bad choices that I might as well just carry on making them. It's that whole thing. I've eaten one piece of chocolate now, so I'm just going to eat the whole bar.
Fuck it.
Yeah, and it's, I don't know whether that's like that's just my mindset, but I think there's quite a few people out there like that, and it's like it's all or nothing,
Yeah.
and I think it's like people see me like this. People see me as this person.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to just perpetuate that. I don't have a choice.
Yeah.
And actually, you do have a massive choice in how you choose to then live your life, and
Absolutely.
and owning the bad stuff that
Yeah.
you've done, and choosing a different way.
Yeah.
And it's only if you just completely ignore that and carry on eating every single bar of chocolate
Yeah.
that you end up, I think you end up being quite resentful of yourself. You make it about other people. You're right. You make it about, oh, it's you bought me that bar of chocolate. It's your
Yeah.
fault.
Yeah.
But it's actually, you have the choice as to whether you're going to open it and eat it. And
Yeah.
I think unless we can own it and be honest with ourselves, like, then there isn't a way of moving forward. I I do also worry that sometimes I do also worry that people make decisions about people, and it's really hard for them to change. I'm
Mm.
talking about people in the public eye,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily that have done the most
Mm-hmm.
atrocious, horrible things.
Mm-hmm.
They've made really bad choices.
Yeah.
But I also think we decide this is what this person is.
Yeah.
You know, even as simple things like, I don't know, you're a singer, you can't be a painter as well. You can't,
Mm.
it's like you can't have more than one string to your bow because this is how I see you.
Yeah.
And I think we are limited by other people's views as well at times.
Yeah.
Whether we
Well,
buy into that or not, I'm just trying to work out whether that is I am deflecting, aren't I? I'm making an excuse.
well, this is so what you're describing in the way I see it is that it makes sense that we, even as adults, we still experience that. It's conditioning, it's programming.
Mm.
It's we are conditioned from a very young age, and it starts in your house. Now, I talk about them strange adult creatures that we cohabit with when we're young, aka our parents,
Hmm.
or it might be, an aunt or whatever our situation is, or it's a foster home or, wherever. That's the first environment that we are aware of, perhaps, in early life, whether we remember it or not, whether we feel it's happy or not, whatever the situation, your circumstance, I know that I was conditioned, not alone, you know, I was conditioned by the environment I was in early life. And it's not just a house, a home space, it's, you know, my social, my peers, my young early life little space cadets that I used to hang out with, you know, on the estate or go to their houses. You know, I'm getting conditioned. I've heard it said before that we're like, you know, it's like our whole body is like a lens, right? Like a camera lens. Our whole body, every atom, and every little experience we have, m- right from early on, right through. We're absorbing, we're taking those images and pictures, you know, and we're storing that. Lots and lots and lots of information is going in through our lens of our body. And it's creating this whole um, portfolio of content that we then go refer back
Mm-hmm.
to use to navigate our life. So whatever's going in is stored.
Yeah.
Makes sense, totally, right? And there's loads of different ways of putting it, but that's how, you know, I remember someone saying that. I've not really used that a great deal when I explain it, but felt appropriate to do so. But for me, that means that, you know, and school and all the things that happen in the playground or in the, you know, in the woods or, you know, in the fields and the summer holiday and, you know, these things that happen to us as we're growing up, college, our first experience of you know, having a romance, all of it is conditioning us to have an emotional, mental, physical response to life. And if
Yeah.
all of those experiences they're not all going to be great, but even if they are all great, you're going to be very different to if they're all filled with confusion and sadness and, you know, bewilderment and all, you know, throw in the mix everything you can think of. And anyone listening, you might be sitting there going, you know, reflecting on it. Is it any wonder that we have a response as adults to life in a certain way based on those experiences? And then you might, like me, get to a point where it doesn't work anymore. Some of those things that we do, which are a response to the things that happen to us,
Mm-hmm.
aren't working anymore. And that deflection only gets you so far. And it might get you through your childhood. It might get you through your teens. It might get you through your 20s even. It might even get you through your 30s. Some people might draw their last breath and never change the thing. Job done. Whatever. But only you know. Only you know, Ben. I know. And anyone listening, you might know. Maybe you don't. And it's about getting real and honest with that. You know, where am I? Where do I sit within that? Is my response to life a skillful one? Is it healthy? Is there drama in my life? Where's that drama coming from? Is it because everyone else? Or what's my part in it? And what it comes down to, the opposite of deflection for me is self-introspection. Boom.
Okay. And what's coming up for me is this idea, and I've struggled this before in teaching, especially as a creative person that's trying to get people to dream quite big. You know, when you're in a classroom trying to get people to draw and paint and take photographs and really think about the world and how they see it and their imaginations. And you're quite often saying to people, well, not quite often, a lot of the time, is I'm trying to convince young people they can be whatever they want to be. And at times I felt a bit of a fraud because I've thought, you can't. You can't. Society, class system, whatever, politics, you're going to be this because that's the cycle that you're stuck in.
Mm.
And I think you're right in that people will deflect uh, from those images, from those ideas that they have stored inside them that they've they've got from home, from their peers, from life, and they decide they're going to be a certain way.
Mhm.
And when you're trying to say to someone, no, you can be whatever you want to be. You don't have to, education is the way out. Just keep educating yourself. Just keep
Mhm.
trying to know as much as you can and keep looking. But yeah, but people get stuck both at that point because of the conscripts of society and where they come from.
Mhm.
And then they end up deflecting because they're scared. They're scared and they feel unsafe. Like to do something different to what mum and dad do,
Yeah.
or auntie, or
Yeah.
whatever the home situation is. To be different to what their peers are.
Yeah.
I want to run around the streets with a balaclava because I've watched Top Boy and this is what all my friends are doing. I want to have a BMX. I want to have a
Yeah.
skateboard. I want to have whatever. I want to fit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's very few people that are allowed or have that confidence at that age to enable them to be brave enough to go and seek something different and go, "Oh,
Yeah.
okay, I can change this. I can change this situation."
Yeah.
And I worry that in terms of how we live and how we work, and this might be big conspiracy theory, but the idea of revolution, the idea that that people can think differently and can question things, we don't encourage that. We don't allow people to grow and be different and stay. You don't have to stay in this box. There's
Mm.
this box
S-
you can look at as well.
So that radical, because it's an act of, that revolution of the heart and the
Mm,
mind.
mm,
We're talking about liberating our viewpoints,
yeah,
we're liberating our soul, our spirit, our human spirit, to want to have a life that we know we can have,
yeah,
and we would like it. And I was in the school the other day, and I was saying to these young, they were 12 years old. And I was saying I was the one sitting by the window, and everyone that was sitting near the window all sort of looked out the window, and I was like, I was the one sitting by the window, staring out the window. And I was in this sort of dreamscape fantasy of what maybe my life could be
mm,
one day outside of this classroom. And I had aspirations, and I talked to them young students, those young mavericks, about you know me being a young skateboarder, and I'm very good at, and like you, I'm talented at drawing, and I had these aspirations of going to America, to California, and starting a skateboard company and being a pro skater and drawing my own board graphics and t-shirts and having apparel and all of that stuff. And that was my aspiration, but it ended right there in that classroom, looking out the window dreaming about it, because by the time I got out of school, it was a done deal that that weren't happening.
mm,
Why was that? Was it nurtured? Well, I believe my mum and dad are both nurturing in their own way. Um, and I'm pretty sure they would have said to me, we're proud of you, and you can be anything you want. I'm pretty sure of that. But maybe that's just a couple of people that maybe saw what I saw. And then there's everyone else,
mm,
and who have I got around me? Where am I putting my energy and my focus to nurture, to keep that dream alive, and to make that, happen, to realize that dream, that aspiration. And I think that's what you're saying is, it's almost like it's predetermined.
yeah,
Um, is the school system, and you're a head teacher, so you can answer this, is the school system set up to encourage that autonomy and individuality and creativity to be able to, you want to do that? All right, let's help you figure out how we're going to do that. So by the time you leave school, you're going to be well equipped to go and at least give it the best shot. Or is it designed to kind of just get in line, and does it deflect people's aspirations to be incredible? And it's only my opinion, but I see that a lot of the people that actually do go and do cool shit, they're dropouts.
Yeah, I would.
Some of them, you know what I mean?
Well, I'd say one, you've got your there's those dropouts, those dreamers, those people that look at the world a bit differently and manage to escape from wherever they come from,
Mm-hmm.
and they become. I don't want to use the term influencers because that makes it sound like social media, but they become influencers in the sense that they create something beautiful
Yep.
and they're creatives that inspire other people.
Influential. Yeah.
Influential in
Yeah.
in in what they do.
Yeah.
And but I also I think a lot of what we're saying comes down to money. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it comes down to when we look at aspirations, it's about owning the car. It's about having the big house. It's
Mm-hmm.
about having gold taps. It's like it's looking aspirationally at I would love to like you could make skateboards. You could design skateboards. You could be painting skateboards every day. And I don't know, you sell 2 skateboards a week. And that's enough for you to go and buy some food and live.
Yep.
But everyone wants so much more. Everyone wants to sell 200 skateboards.
Yeah.
Um, and I just feel that, yeah, the system is set up that people want more. And it's about the stuff rather than the actual thing that makes them happy and gives them purpose. You know, like that should be enough. You know, I've painted a skateboard this week and I've sold it. That's fine.
Mm. Yeah.
There's that someone told me this story about the fisherman, the one that he goes out every morning, catches 5 fish, and he comes back every afternoon, sells 4, and 1 fish he eats with his family, and he plays on the beach with his kids. And then someone comes up to him and says, "Oh, I can invest in your fishing and I can give you this amount of money and we can go out and we can capture 100 fish. And then we'll buy more boats and we'll get bigger and bigger and we can sell all these fish. And then you can retire and you'll be rich. And you can play with the kids." He said, "Well, I'm doing that now. Why do I need all that to get to this same point that I'm at now?"
I love that.
And I just feel that's where we're conditioned at this moment in time as humans, is to
Yeah.
want more. And actually, when you get to a certain point, you realize what's important. And it's it's ikigai. Have you come across ikigai? The Japanese,
Ikigai, no. That sounds, is that a made up name?
it's a Japanese term.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend anyone, especially the person called Ikigai. Sorry, I've took me off guard. Sorry.
No, it's a term that it's about finding your purpose, about finding your soul.
Okay, yeah,
What is it that you can do that will give you fulfillment
yeah,
and sustain you as a human being?
yeah.
And if you find your ikigai, then you will live a much more fulfilled and more purposeful life, and you'll be happier, you'll be nourished.
I'm living my Ikigai,
Yeah.
right? I really am, you know. As you know, I wrote a book and I launched it 3 months ago, very quietly and modestly. And I'm the guy of the 4 fish.
Mm.
Literally, it's how I feel. Yeah. And you know, I want people to find a book, read the book, because I wrote it to pass on a bit of insight into some stuff that I struggled with, and that's the whole purpose of it, as you know. But I feel really content with, "Oh, I sold 1 book this week."
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because it's exactly what you're saying. I've been around enough people to see when they go the other way with it, and they wanna it's never enough.
Mhm.
And distraction came up for me when you was talking through that story and saying all that stuff, because all of what that guy was offering him was a distraction from being with his kids, because he would have had to put the work in, he would have had to do more stuff, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, he would have been rewarded with more riches and money and success, whatever. But that would distract from the thing that's keeping him rich in his heart right now, which
Mhm.
is time with family. He has enough. And there's something really beautiful about just having enough, and that's okay, and living within your means. Ego comes up for me as well, because you can be intoxicated. The ego gets really intoxicated by glittery, shiny things,
Mhm.
you know? It does. I've been intoxicated in my life by all of the trappings of everything. I mean, everything, and none of it filled that sort of hole in my soul. you know? It's all a distraction. And again, getting back to the conditioning, I think that's what we are taught. It's the message we're receiving, even in movies. Like, honestly, there's a lot of movies now I just don't even entertain, because there's this real trend in, it's all about just having looking a certain way and living in a certain way. And it's just all getting a bit out of hand, isn't it? It's just getting a bit out of fucking hand, man. We need to reel it in a bit and get back to just having 4 fish.
Mm.
I love that story. I've never heard that before, and I love it, and I'm gonna use it because it's so on point for me. It really is the answer to having contentment.
Yep. And I think we're too often, like you said, our films, our arts, the stuff we consume is created by people who have a certain level of privilege. Am I allowed to say that? Who come from a background that enables them to access that easier.
Yeah?
Like, how many voices do we have from, proper working class? How many artists come from a proper working class background and have decided that they're gonna create whatever and
Mm,
stick it out there, and are allowed to get there without being conditioned, without being going through a certain, going through the machine. Now
mhm,
you come out the other end and you're all shiny and perfect.
yeah,
And those authentic voices that we're trying to find and trying to encourage,
yeah,
like that idea that you can be anything you want to be, and everyone, I want to be a footballer, I want to be a pop star, I want to. It's like, but what do you really, what's really going to give you fulfillment? What's really going to give you that
yeah.
that ikigai? and I was going to keep using it because it's amusing you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. How do you spell this guy's name?
It's not a guy's name. It's a like a thing. It's
Oh, so I'm not offending someone.
no,
I
no, no.
thought, because when you said it, I thought of icky, ICKY,
Yeah,
as
yeah,
in icky, that icky feeling,
yeah.
and guy being GUY. It's like an
No,
icky guy,
no.
but
It's a
that was
Japanese term for finding your
oh,
purpose.
okay. I don't mean to offend the Japanese
And I
culture or anything,
and I'm probably saying it completely wrong as well.
Right,
So
icky
yeah,
guy. I'm going to use this, man.
yeah,
So it's a bit like getting finding your flow.
yeah,
Your
yeah.
chi, your pra, your life force, your
Yeah,
energy, your ikigai.
yeah. And how many of us are allowed to find that? How many of us are given the time and space to do that? Because we have to
What?
to constrain ourselves to living.
Yeah,
Like I have to do this job and this job and this job
yeah.
to pay the rent and
And
and to put food on the table.
yeah, and if only I could get the million subscribers, right? Then I will have made it,
Yeah.
right? And I won't have to struggle anymore, and I'll get my ikigai. right? And it's like, I know people, have tranced 1 million subscribers, man, and have they got any more ikigai for it? No. If anything, they might have a little bit less.
Yeah, that's the
Because it's all deflecting. Let's get back to deflection. Deflection, distracting, it's deviating us away from the real prize. The real prize. Deflection is the inability to just be
yeah, yeah,
before fish.
yeah. And you and I, both you and I have worked and have met very, very successful people that have theoretically cracked that. They've got the, you know, million subscribers or whatever it is. They've in a lot of people's eyes, they've got success beyond what anyone else could want
Mm,
or need. And as you said, like we've seen the unhappiness.
mm,
It's not giving them what they want. It's not
mm,
filling the hole. And
mm.
I think that's what we deflect from, isn't it? Is those holes. We don't want to admit that there's these massive holes that have been created by the negative images that we're storing.
Yeah. It's, I've got to be careful what I say, but, there's billionaires, millionaires, trillionaires, whatever, there's people I've been around. And there's a common theme for what we're talking about, and it's the inability to just be still.
Mm.
They're always plotting, doing something. There's always something going on. Right? It's constant. It's a constant. There's a huge insecurity that comes with that level of existence.
Mm.
Huge insecurity, in my opinion. No different to the person who has huge insecurity for not being able to um, eat eat their eat any food today. It's in a way it's less insecurity for the person who knows they're not going to eat today because they know they're not going to eat today,
Yeah.
and if anything they eat is a bonus.
Mm.
But to the people that have too much surmounted so much, but it's such they probably won't admit it, but there's a huge insecurity of not having it,
Yeah.
and it's never enough.
No.
It's never enough. There's never enough zeros. There's never enough of anything. And if you remove it all, it would be a curse, but I'd say it's a blessing. You know, that's just what I think, without saying too much. So for me, have I wanted to have all of that? Yeah, of course, man. Like, God, yeah. I was chasing that shit in my
Mhm.
former years of deflecting from the holes that were in my soul. I'm not saying everyone that's got loads of cash and, got the Lambos and the yachts has got holes in their soul. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that for me, I had them. And only people know whether they've got these holes in their souls. Maybe they don't. Maybe they're completely oblivious and don't understand what we're saying, but that's okay. Business as
Maybe
usual.
they're just deflecting
Yeah.
from the reality.
I don't know. Who knows? Only they know. Maybe. But I had these holes in my soul.
Mm.
They were there. Why have I got them? Um, because they were there. Where did they come from? Um, Childhood, school, life. Life has a habit of puncturing holes in this vessel of mine that I'm in. So how do we fill them? Do we pour liquid gold into them? Do we pour, you know, lashings of access and
Or
substances?
do we keep picking at them because we don't want them to heal?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So yeah, deflection is for me just we it's a deviation away from truth, from reality. whatever your reality and your truth is, maybe you know what that is and you're deviating away from it. Maybe you don't. I know what I did.
Mm. I
And
know I did, yeah.
deflection now for me is putting mozzie spray on. I don't even use that anymore, actually. You know, that's how I would interpret deflection now. Is like I'm in the jungle. Who's got the mozzie spray? Yeah, I don't know, man.
Yeah,
No-
I think it's that honesty to stop deflecting, to know that you're deflecting, to understand the nourishment that you need. And I think it's really important that yeah, that deflection doesn't create a stuckness. It I think that's what it's difficult to see deflection, in a way that isn't hiding something, that isn't masking. And trying to find that growth is so important.
Yeah, it's it's look. I was getting into one about I wasn't making passing judgment on other people. It's just of observations that I see along my travels, and that's okay. It's just my way I see it. And but for me, like go back to it, I didn't have any accountability, and then life threw so many curveballs at me, and I was creating a lot of it, going back to that cycle of life and death and birth, rebirth and suffering. That I was caught in that perpetuating, revolving door of misery. I was forced to look at some shit
Mm.
and get honest, get real, ask for help, and get real. I had to get real. I had to get honest with myself, and it's about accountability. Always keep saying it. It's
Mm.
I was deviating, deflecting, sidestepping, avoiding the issue. So I ain't gonna take accountability or responsibility for any of my actions or conduct. So, you know, I'm compartmentalizing all them things through shame, guilt, feeling remorse, but I don't want to feel that shit, so I'm gonna numb it out. It didn't happen. If I think it didn't happen, it ain't there. So I'll just tell myself, so there's a lot of denial around it. That's a big part, and that's the thing that will um keep me stuck, Always. The first layer of that onion is always denial. Peel that fucker away. Underneath it is then, right, there's some layers here. Let's get through these layers to the truth. Do a bit of excavating. And that process, I did that process with a group of people in support. Some of it was therapy, some of it was just guided through a sensei, I want to call them, you know, um, some really great people that had already done some digging and excavation and knew their truth and had accountability, and they knew how to hold that space for me to feel like I could get real, because you ain't going to get real with yourself or anyone else if you don't feel there's got to be a level of trust in that process.
Yeah, it's that safety, isn't it? It's that
Because
safety of, like that's part of our development and our consciousness, in the idea that when we're little, and we close our eyes and cover our eyes with our hands, that no one else can see us.
exactly.
And I think it's that taking away of the hands and opening the eyes, and seeing that it's okay, it's safe.
Yeah.
It's safe to be, um, yeah, whoever you want to be, and it is okay. You can do that, and
Yeah.
it's not about monetizing that and saying, "Oh yeah, you've got to earn this much to do that." You
Mm.
can do that with whatever.
Full fish.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, don't have to be a bloody, yeah, reinvent the wheel to be able to, have a good, fruitful life. Um, yeah. So there's a level of vulnerability with that honesty, a rawness. And to me, it was bloody scary. I was so scared. that fear kept me stuck, you know, and that fear will keep me in denial, and that denial will deflect away from the truth every single time.
Mm.
So when I was faced with myself and I had to get real, and some really good people in the support groups, you know, and the way that I did it, um, they really taught me how to, you know, I was challenged.
Mm.
I mean, a big part of it is being challenged. As a good teacher will challenge the student,
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
and students, it's up to them what they do with that. But a good teacher will not just talking about the school setting, any educator, be it a parent or a good friend or a work, you know, superior, or whatever you want to call it. It doesn't have to be a superior. Will challenge the student because might be able to see something that the student can't see yet, and you have to challenge it in order for them to at least look at it. Whether they're gonna own it is up to them, you know, but you've got to challenge them, say, "Look, this is what's going on." If it's met with deflection, then it's met with deflection. Um, but I got to a point where I was challenged over and over, and for me, it was surrender. I
Mhm.
feel like surrender is a big component of putting down the, you know, that deflection as a means to avoid.
Yeah.
Is I need to surrender. And then what follows surrender is, okay, I need to look at some shit here. I need to go inward and see what's going on and look at my conduct, my thinking. I need to look at my thinking,
Yeah.
and I need to work for a process. I need to process, where am I going wrong here? And that's okay. I'm not a bad person. I'm just wired in a certain way, and I need to recalibrate and change my viewpoint and be open and honest and willing to do things a different way.
Yeah.
The end.
Mm. Yeah. I think that's a nice place to stop. I think,
Okie
yeah,
dokie.
that's been taking down of the barriers, getting rid of the deflection. I think we may have opened up some of the holes there and filled a few.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm gonna highlight deflection in red because we've covered it.
excellent.
How do you feel that, you know, because I know when I chose the last one, you was like, oh, I didn't think that would go that way.
Yeah, I feel a bit, always feel a bit, yeah, like I'm never quite sure where it's going to go. So that was, yeah, that was an interesting one. I, d-
Interested.
I didn't, I struggled at the beginning to work out what it was. And then I realized that actually I have been deflecting for most of my life. So
Oh, wow. Really?
yeah, I think so.
Is that what you got from that? See, that's not just for you.
No.
And it's not just for me, it's for everyone listening.
Mm.
That's pretty much what we've set out to do, is to, you know, like you said, what does this mean to me? Is this relevant to me?
Yeah.
And we can, that's part of the deflection,
Yeah.
is to not join the dots and go, this isn't relevant to me. I don't correlate with this. But then through introspection and process, it's like, oh, actually, is it fair to say it does?
Yeah. It's to use a Star Wars analogy again. Um, it's like, it's like taking the tractor beam off so you can actually escape the Death Star. It's putting those defenses, taking the defenses off,
Yeah,
so you stop deflecting
yeah.
and actually allow something to sit with you and percolate. Like
Mhm,
having the conversation, like this is what we're trying to do in terms of speaking each week and talking to each other about an emotion, a feeling, is where does that sit? And am I going to allow it to actually, am I going to allow myself to actually feel it
mhm.
and see where it sits inside? Because so often we aren't conscious. We aren't looking at what's keeping us inside the Death Star.
I
We're
love
not
that.
we're not taking down the tractor beam.
Yeah, we have a choice.
Yeah.
We always have a choice, man.
Yeah.
Even when you think you haven't, you have. Stop deflecting from that realization. You have got a choice. Own it.
Yeah.
Get real. Get honest. Open your mind. Be honest. Be willing to make changes. Because you can.
Mm.
It's scary.
Yeah.
You don't have to do it alone, all right? Safety in numbers.
Definitely.
Okay, well on that note, I'm going in the ocean. I'm gonna deflect the freezing cold winter waters by putting a 5'4" winter suit on.
And finding some life under the sea.
Yeah. Apparently there's a humpback whale floating knocking around these waters.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well look, it's been in your words, interesting
Yeah.
as always.
Thank you.
So thank you for allowing me to choose, Mr. Rice.
Thank you for an enlightening discussion as ever, Mr. Noble.
Okay. Right. See you next one.
See you on the next one.